Hello everyone, welcome back, and welcome to the AHC Stuff folder. It's a little bit chaotic right now, but I've managed to do some organizing. So you'll see up in the top left corner, I've got artifacts and objects. I've been spending a lot of time in this folder lately. I've tried to categorize the sarcophagi a little bit more, and I've started a nubbed sarcophagi folder. So we're going to try to organize these by region. There's a lot in Egypt, and there's not very good documentation of them. So I'm going to wait on the nubbed boxes in Egypt, and maybe we'll include some other nubbed boxes in that episode to compare. But today I wanted to focus on those found in Turkey. And there are a ton of these. So I'm going to give you all a little intro and outro maybe going forward. Some of these videos that have a lot of photos that I can't get to in a reasonable amount of time. I'll give you kind of a best of in the beginning and the end, some of the pretty pictures, and then when we talk in the middle of the episode, we'll talk about the details and some of the more high-res photos. I don't know if that sounds good to you guys. You can let me know in the comments, and we'll just pick some out here and focus on some of these very interesting details. So first thing we're going to do is organize them by size. So now we have the largest high-res photos at the top, and they get smaller as they go down. So there's a few in particular that I want to talk about today, about 4 or 5 specifically, that they're probably the weirdest and have non-lifting nub expressions. I want to say these are in configurations that are not conducive to lifting. They go down below the boxes in some of these cases. So I think we need to entertain the language idea for these a little bit more. Now, obviously, almost all of them do have what appear to be nubs for lifting. They are on the lids in paired configurations, even and symmetrical. It does look like that's how you get the lid off. I mean, what else would those be for? But there are some other obvious weird things going on here that I think we can't look at them all the same way. We have to start categorizing them and differentiating. Chris over at Stone Nub Language on Twitter, at TwistDead1, he put up a great post the other day saying that, yes, we kind of know that they're a phenomenon now, so let's take the next step and try to categorize them either by region, by shape, size, profile, the possible patterns. So I think that is the next step that we should be taking. And up until now, I've just been trying to prove the point and show that they are indeed a global phenomenon. So now let's dig a little bit deeper and see how far the rabbit hole goes. So first we'll look at this museum piece. I'd say this is one of the more elaborate and embellished of the boxes. The facades and motifs and decorative elements, they all echo the Lycian rock-cut tombs. A lot of those facades match this shape. I have some of those we can look at later. They might even be partial boxes. We were talking about that as well. Some of these weren't completely removed from the bedrock, but there are some very nice preserved ones that were obviously able to be moved around as well. This one has a lot of repair to it. You see the color difference. All of the lighter colored stone is repair. See here as well. I'm not even sure about the base, but obviously all this lighter color cement has been applied to put this thing back together, and then they've applied the friezes around the bottom here. So in this example, the top, these, what we'll call them nubs up the top, the very, very top, they're lion's heads. Now, some of them they left crude, square, or the sideways capital D shape, but then they could take them all the way to very ornate decorative details like here. This, you would be very, you could lift with these, but you want to be very careful. You'd break off the paws maybe. There's ones that are busts of maybe the people that were buried here, if they are indeed sarcophagi for burials. But the nubs can take on all kinds of variations here. How do we describe them? Are we going to call these nubs? I have to with the other examples that show that they're obviously nubs. So lion's heads nubs. We've seen lion's head drain spouts like at Heraclea Sintica in Bulgaria. There's lion's head drain spouts laying around the foundations, and the foundations have nubs. So going deeper, there are other nubs along the sides here. Now, the restored parts show them all the exact same profile and shape. The originals, yes, they're broken here, but we'll look at some other examples where these profiles vary. I don't think they were all the same. I think there was more variation in the originals. We'll look at that in a second. So let's go to Xanthos. Xanthos has some of the craziest boxes, like this one on the left. I mean, it's wild. It's only got these nubs around the top on 3 sides, not 4 sides, only 3 sides. And then it has a partial nub or a shallow nub at the bottom. What is that about? They are different profiles, each one. Yes, it's broken, but I think this is the most prominent and largest, and the other ones are more slender, maybe shallower. The box next to it doesn't have any nubs. So why did this one need them and this one didn't? Up here in this little top piece, you see the nubs like in the museum example. So we've got them as this decorative pattern on the sides of these boxes, these ones with these gabled tops or arched tops. So we're going to look for these on the side, and I'll show you some more variation in these. But for example here, there's only a couple where the others knocked off. We'll maybe see some more angles of this, see if we can find any more. So some more angles here of these Xanthos boxes. Weird square holes in them. You see that? This is an amazing photo. I love these super high-res photos. I could stare at these all day. You can see the texturing, the way they were carved or molded, whatever you want to say. I don't care. At least not right now. Yes, it does look like they were broken off here. See that? You can see in some instances where these things break off, and you got to spot that and point that out. You can't be disingenuous and say, well, there weren't any there. Well, if there's a trace, there's a trace. But then again, if there isn't a trace, you cannot, invent a trace. So these little light patches, those are traces of where they were probably knocked off. Let's go ahead and point out the top two. They might be a little off. This one might be a little higher than this one. This one might be a little lower, right? And they're crudely shaped or heavily worn. Maybe they're broken. Can't go too much farther here, guys. But is this a lid? I think this is all just one piece here, this top part. So I think they're just decorative, and they're, implications of the more functional examples that we see. So see, here's the backside. There is no 4th nub on this thing. So why is there just 3? That's confusing. Again, you can see some of these marks. That one sticks out very far, actually. And this kind of, you can see the faint bevel line. That's interesting. And all these scratch marks. I assume the base was the same time period, and this might even have a faint bevel over here. You see that lighter part? So I want to say this is all contemporary. And then this very faint, very nice bevel along the very bottom. We'll go ahead and just zoom in on that. Look at that. Laser straight. All the way around, probably. And then there's a couple more of these, we want to call these Birdhouse Style. They're very ornate, single piece maybe. This one might actually, I don't know. The top of that one might actually come off. Could be, yeah. And again, you can see these nubs here are very plain, very functional. They weren't carved into some pretty decorative element, so very functional here. Then these down here, interesting damage, right? But I'm not sure if these were even all the way across. There might be one broken off here, but the spacing between these two, it just doesn't seem right. So maybe the variation implies something. Maybe there's some way to read by the variation. It's just an idea. Above, obviously they could do it even if they wanted to as a decoration. You see that on a lot of Greek and Roman temples as well. Another close-up here. Yeah, I am going to say that the top is separate because you can see the beveled edge right there. So the top of this one does come off. So if it comes off, this is probably the best way to take it off. So there you go, a functional example. I am admitting they are sometimes for lifting. Down here, I'm not so sure. They seem a little off. Look, I'll zoom in all the way. We'll get it. Where are they? Yes, broken off here. A probably mirror image of that. But this one you can see from this bevel line, this one's a little higher. This one maybe was a little bit lower, about halfway through it. These two over here, was there a third? Looks like it might have been, but the spacing seems different. Hard to tell on some of it. I know it gets so pixelated. I'll show you a better example here. Okay, here's one example. This one is a bedrock box. It's still a monolith. It's still attached by the bottom. There is no lifting, taking the top off or anything. These on the side are just ornamental. So we'll look closer at them. At first glance, they do look, pretty even, but I think there's a little bit of variation to them, and especially where these broken off areas were. How did they break off in that manner? You see what's remaining here. Is this all one piece, or are these separate pieces inserted? From up here, they look like the original, like the same as the bedrock. Then you go lower, and you can see that some of these, like this one is bigger, obviously, and then this one is smaller. It is a smaller square. And I think it goes small, big, small, big, small. And some of them have little corners cut out. We'll look at another example that has some of these little, corners of these nubs knocked out. Okay, this one is really the example that got me thinking about the variation in the side of these nubs. So, first of all, there's a bigger space here than over here and over here. There's a little corner cut out. That looks like an intentional corner cut out of there. And then this one on the very end, it seems a different shape, like the corner was cut off. This big one right in the middle, it has a tapered top instead of a carved top. This one kind of transitions to, has a little bit of a slope to it. But this one right in the middle, big one, and then a smaller one and a smaller one. And was there any more on the other side? It doesn't seem uniform and symmetrical here. It looks like there's something trying to be said here. This bottom one is curious. You see the hole in it. A hole through the corner. How did that happen? Was that a later person doing that to leash up their goat? I don't know. But you can see the texturing too, and this kind of bevel line, and obviously the holes in it. I don't know what kind of damage that is, if that was just poor rock quality from the quarry or what. They've been broken into, or something has blown up out of them. I don't know. More holes and strange things. And you can see faint bevels as well in some of these blocks. Right here as well. And up here as well. Again, laser straight. And we'll go ahead and mention these while we're here because they're right next to it. What about these nubs on this bottom piece? You can see the different shapes, right? They are not just a decorative thing here. This is a square one and a more rectangular one. And who knows what that was. That's obviously damaged. Interesting textures. And then, well, do we say it's from the same time period as the inscription on top? Maybe, but I don't know, maybe not. Another angle. You can see how crazy some of this stuff gets. Zoom in real close. You can see the writing. Wow. Yeah. So, that is the writing of the region. Historically. You can see some of this. This looks, I can't say what that was originally. It's too damaged. This seems to be somewhat intact. It's like a shallow half round with a indentation underneath. It's interesting color variation too in those scratch marks. I don't know. These pedestals are very curious. Some more of that hole damage, repeating scratch marks, bevels. This might be part of the bedrock down here, but it is separate. And again, the bevel line, laser straight. And then we'll jump back over to the museum example again. And yeah, all those are part of this repair. So yeah, they sure do look uniform there. But were they originally? I don't believe so. Here's one, a monolithic one, by those Lycian rock-cut tombs. Zooming in. I think these were all different profiles. I mean, yes, they're broken off, and maybe someone broke them off to hide this fact, but they seem like some are more rectangular, some are more square, some protruded more maybe, but I know I can't say now because who knows, but, and I think there is a little bit of a variation. Wish we could cut those bushes. Yeah. And then I like this one with a little built-in bench seat at the bottom too. Very plain nubs, but an interesting remnant down here. What is that? Curious. All right, Andrew, enough with the wishy-washy hypothetical examples. Show us something that's really compelling, I hear you say. So let's go back to Xanthos again, and let's look at this box in particular. This one, among a couple others, really had me wondering. Now, we'll zoom in close first here, get to the top. So there's a big cut out of this corner. There are holes in this again. Is that poor quality from the quarry? What is that about? It's down in the bottom again. Nub in the middle. Was there one over on the left? Maybe. Broken off? Maybe. On the right, where would it have gone? There's a corner cut out. Below it, though, there is a little shallow remnant of a vertical triangle nub, and then another smaller one down here, I think. And then you have, obviously, the big, fat, square one. That's wild. Why is it like that? And then the bevel line underneath, I think. And then, of course, even lower, more bevel lines. So bevels within bevels again. And then you go down into the base. All right, now why are there nubs down here then? These aren't for lifting. Decoration, they're still kind of haphazard. They're not a nice, pretty, uniform design all the way around. They're just little lumps. This one's larger. These are smaller. Some of these up here, and this one down here. It looks a little bit more like some kind of patterning or clustering like we've seen in the other examples. Another angle of it here. You can see that there's one on this beveled block underneath the birdhouse box, or detached box from the bedrock, we'll say. And you can see the nubs again. There's a small one, this wide one at the top. These over here on the right, they kind of mirror each other. No others. Yes, there are broken off parts. They could have been there in the past, but obviously we would see broken off places in uniform spacing if it was just simple decoration. And what's up with this hole and these holes in the blocks? That's some really curious stuff. I don't know what that's about. The discoloration too really makes me wonder. And then Chris over at Twist Dead One Stone Nub Language, he mentioned that, hey, there's a little square opening in the bottom, and it's kind of made the hard way. Like we said, those complex holes, I've shown this on Twitter, it's a hole made at the corner of one block, incorporating the corner of another block, sometimes incorporating the corner of a third block. So instead of just making one cut in one stone, they've made it a little bit more difficult than they had to. So this little notch at the bottom, below some nubs, looks like Silistani, Peru. That wall with the small corner filler stone, which I think that might be a small corner filler stone of some kind there. You can see how it comes down and then goes into this L shape of the corner of that block, interlocking, polygonal, right? He thinks it looks like Silistani, Peru, where this wall has these nubs along the top and then a square niche below. I'll pause here and I'll show you real quick. And you go over to Silistani, Peru. This wall. So it has these nubs on top. And then below it there's this little corner cutout hole. I don't really know where it goes or if it goes anywhere. It could just be a shallow depression into the rock. I'm not sure. There's hardly any photos of this. But just an interesting kind of side connection there. You know, we see a platform of some kind with nubs on it and a little square hole at the bottom. Just noticing parallels. So jumping back over to here, why was this hole made into the bottom? It doesn't look like a robber's forced entry. That looks intentional, doesn't it? Original. So what if this was a tomb and someone's buried in there? Is that how you put the body in? Was the body really just down in the bottom and not up in here? So is this hollow for no reason? Is there any other spaces and voids in here? You hardly get any photos inside of these. Another angle here, more zoomed out, and you can see that there are polygonal elements, you know, severe polygonal elements, like the stuff you would see at Delphi, or, you know, some of these other Greek examples. The flat-faced surface treatment, that's kind of specific to these Greek sites. You know, you see the more puffy style of polygonal in South America and other places. And you see a bevel block over there as well. See how it just changes from standard course right into polygonal. It does the same over here. And I assume there was obviously more of it in the past. And then our friends over there in the corner. This one at Pandora is interesting too. We talked about this arch in an earlier episode, and its bevel block, and I didn't notice that this was sitting right next to it, but you can see there's a hole cut into it. That looks maybe original. You know, it's not roughly hewn. That's nicely shaped. Was that an intentional original feature of this thing? Was there a slab that went there as a door, and then that's broken and gone? Possibility, I guess. This one has lumpy nubs on the lid. One is broken off. Was that an attempt to open the thing before? I don't know. Is this thing even hollow? I don't know. It seems like there's some other voids and things down here. These holes again, what's this damage about? That looks more intrusive, like someone trying to see what's in there. Some of these other damage holes at corners, like we talked about in the previous episode, not so sure. Interesting, it's a giant bevel block. See the raised middle. And then a high contrast angle again. You can see there's a faint trace of a nub there. This weird bevel line. And then this nub shape, which is the rounded flat bottom. Not quite a capital D because it's not rounded on this axis, but it is a rounded top flat bottom nub. Then you go around to the other side and man, it gets weird. It's weirder on this side than it was on the other side because now we have a nub, a very rough hewn one, not very shapely, and below it kind of the same thing even though it's a little bit smaller. This one kind of resembles our capital D shaped nub. Striations in the rock. There's a bit of a bevel line and smoother surface treatment under here versus the top here, except up here there's another bevel line where you can see the smoothness. Maybe even if you zoom in real close, you might see there's a very, very faint bevel line running along the bottom of this one. And maybe the others too. It gets so faint, can't even tell. This one was one I really wanted to show you guys. Now, you see them on the box, yes, and the bevel line. They are that capital D shape, that sideways capital D. Now look below, look close. We'll zoom in. Boom. Nubs down here below on the foundation. You see a big one, a small one. This is another one over here actually. So there's two that are mirrored, then a smaller one a little bit higher. None. I don't see any broken off traces really. This looks pretty smooth. Then one more. We'll zoom in again. This is going to get pretty far. Yeah, one little capital D shape. And then what you're seeing on the end here is a finial. That is a decorative shape. This shows up around Auriconda. I believe it's Auriconda. Let's stop for a second. Look, go back to the site catalog and Auriconda. Yes, this is the site. So that's the box in question. And what you'll notice is the amphitheater, we'll zoom in, has these finial pieces as well, trim pieces that flank the stairwell. But there's more than that. Let me see if I can find some for you real quickly, because as you guys know with these amphitheater examples, it is an Easter egg hunt. But I was fairly certain that there are at least a few nubs peppered throughout. I think this might be one here. It might be. And over here as well. I think these are. And here you go. Definitely one right here. That is not the finial. The finial is this piece here. This is a nub. And I think they are peppered throughout. So it's hard to find. This one's not the greatest quality photo. This one is another good example of how they are just hidden in here. You got to look real close. See it? This lighter patch, and then down here, even in the moss, another nub. So whatever they're saying, whatever they're for, there's a lot of these amphitheaters that have them, and they're in such a ruined state, you know, poor quality photos, I know. But man, that's exciting for me to see a couple of those there and just wonder about what else could be there. Auriconda has a lot of this kind of stuff. We talked about in the earlier episode as a lipped block construction and polygonal construction. And then you look down at the bottom again here, that finial shape, it's like the top of a banister, right? So that's a regional shape. So we can, I think, maybe tie these nubs to this regional shape. I don't know, something to consider though, that it's an original element of the block along with the nub, so it's a symbol of theirs, right? You really got to look close at Ariconda because there is clusters again of nubs. See here, 2, 2, 2, and maybe even one above, but it's just right here, clustered in this corner. There aren't any others. It's just the weird lips all the way down. So, what does that mean? That means they're trying to say something, I guess. I can't think of anything else. I wanted to mention the lipped blocks over on the right, the margin lines, they kind of turn into nubs, don't they? They kind of sputter. They're not continuous. They're not on all four faces. Curious. They kind of stop about an inch or two before the margins in some cases. It's just weird. I have another building of this. We're going to look at these in another episode. It might be a part 2 of the lipped blocks, but I found some more sites that have this stuff. Weird holes in this. Okay, we're getting off track now. We'll get back to the boxes. Okay, no, wait, one more thing. So look down here at the bottom. More nubs. You see the clustering. It looks like a pattern. It's not continuous. It's not uniform. You guys have to be able to see that. And it's at the bottom, right? It's at this top piece has been put back up here. There was obviously some capitals that are supposed to go in between here that's missing. But the foundation, this is all originally laid. And it's this pattern of nubs. But yes, at this site, right next to it is the box. You can see the polygonal elements below, more of these finial elements, and even from back here, you can see the nubs. So was this meant to be read? Like, is this the front door, and you're supposed to walk in and read the bottom? I don't know, but why else are they there in that configuration? Another angle of it here so we can zoom in and see the bottom. There appears to be a finial on either end, right? A lone nub down here. A gap. Yes, there's some foliage, but in the other photo we saw it was all the way down. There's nothing. Then this nub, and this nub. So a cluster. Some kind of pattern. And then from here you can see the bottom of this box has a nub. And then of course the ends do as well. Same shapes. And a hole in the side. It looks pretty square. Was that an original element? Was there a door that went onto it? Perhaps, but then again, why would you need that if you're supposed to be lifting the lid off to put things inside of it and take things out? I don't know. A plaque maybe? Let's look at some more of these boxes that have the square holes in them. Now this one looks a little rougher, a little less shapely. So maybe you could say, you could argue that that was somebody breaking into it. Okay, I'll give you that. What about these? Would a robber, looter take the time to square these off so nicely? Look at that bevel line too. Triple bevel. Very nice. And these are really, oblong, kind of, one sticks out farther. They're not very shapely. Was this, you could argue that, these were the early stages of the carving and they were only later going to be embellished and decorated. Well, some of them look finished and simple, and others look finished and ornate. So it's kind of hard to make that argument. I think you can have both examples as a finished box. See, this to me looks like a looter's forced entrance. This looks like somebody hacked into it. And here you can see the nubs were busts of people. You can see the head and the shoulders and the robes that they were wearing. Looks like there were 2, and then I believe on the ends are the lion's heads. So this is a very ornate, decorative one. And the incised plaque or, inscription panel, could that be original? Yes. Could it be later? Yes. So I really don't know. Some of these simple inscription panels, you'll see some more of these. I'm not sure if they are original or not. You've seen the inscribed cross on the tops in the earlier photos. Here's a unique one that has a circle, star. I like that one. And while we're at it, let's look at some more of the nice decorative examples. So another one here. Looks like it was broken into, yes? Now, it's a monolithic example. The bottom part is part of the bedrock. It's not separate. This one's not going anywhere. The lion's heads as nubs, these look pretty finished to me, but then on this side you have a kind of simple plain nub. So were they all supposed to have lion's heads and all be embellished? So I'm not sure. Here's an example of, two different levels of finish on the same lid. And then some of these down here at the bottom, those look pretty plain as well. Like this one wasn't finished if we're going to go down that avenue. And some of the decoration can get pretty fancy, and each one can look pretty unique. Like this one here, you have, I want to say every bit of this is original. There's no recarving going on here. This is how the box was finished. And the faces as nubs, that's interesting. And then the ends, they are just simple, plain shapes. The panel in the middle, very ornate, and it might be that the other panels are original as well, but this one obviously is. Very fancy corners. Looks like a pot or a vessel of some kind. Smoke coming out of it. Interesting, maybe, or plant growing out of it. Interesting motif. Both sides. And these might be shell shapes. Not sure what you call these. I'm really not sure the official term for this style of panel. Another museum example, and here you go. This is about as, ornate as you get. These are all relief carvings. The nubs on the ends are lion's heads. One is broken off. You can see that the one at the end is broken off. So, did that break off when they were trying to lift it by them? What does that say about the strength of these nubs and the capability of them to be used in that way? Interesting. Sphinxes and centaurs. Interesting. I forgot I did have another angle of that previous box with that urn or pot with plant growing out of it. You can see that these were probably faces on this side. They're just obliterated. So on the two sloping faces, there were faces. Yes? On these ends, the flat ends, they are the capital D shape. Very rough, very big. These seem practical to me, like you're going to lift from these. And then notice this motif down here, the false door motif with the door knocker on it. You will see the false door motif with the door knocker on it in Ethiopia. So now we're in Ethiopia at that tomb where inside there is a nub sarcophagus. But hey, the same motif again. This door knocker on a incised false door. Yes, the other false doors had more panels, sometimes 2, sometimes 4, but I think this is more than just a coincidence here. Just so everyone remembers, this box inside the tomb has 3 nubs on it. 1, 2, 3, and I believe there are 3 more on the other side, but this box hasn't been moved in generations, so who knows. Could be on the others as well, but smashed up, hard to tell. I don't believe there are any on this one. Okay, back to the boxes. Before I forget, I want to show you this example. Another clear example of something more going on here than just a lifting boss. Maybe so on the top, but down at the bottom, what are these two about? You got the finials on either side, and 2 little lone nubs by themselves on these blocks. If this was a lifting boss, there would be 2. So, what does this mean? They seem pretty centered, equidistant from the finials and from each other. So, is this just merely decoration? And whoever heard of a decoration like that, And then, of course, what would that imply with these other examples all across the world? Is it just decoration at all these different sites? I don't think so. And this bevel line again, another curious bevel line. This one's not so straight. It dips in the middle. Interesting texturing. Maybe a corner missing off of this. Maybe that's just a broken piece, or maybe it's a notched corner like in that previous example. And another inscribed, panel. So is this panel original? I'm going to have to say so. It seems to be in style with the rest. It's nice and precise like the rest. I'm not sure if all of them have names in those panels, though. More beveling down here. These guys here, you can look at their profiles on the nubs on top, but then there's a hole here. This one kind of looks intrusive to me. Maybe rough carved to get in there. Maybe. Then it has a square notch in the bottom. That's curious. That looks pretty, square. It looks intentional by the original builders. Maybe that was a way to move it around, the square notch in the bottom. But why didn't the others have that if that was a standardized technique? I got to see this over and over again in the same patterns over and over again for me to, accept that it's a standardized technique. Even between these two boxes sitting next to each other, the nubs are different. The one in the background has larger, more square nubs. This one seems like it was more rectangular than this one, obviously. You can see one there's broken off, obviously, yes. Another panel. Wish they'd cut the grass and move the bushes. Intrusive or original? And then if you look close, two little nubs. Maybe even 3 or 4 nubs. I'm not even sure. It's so grainy. But they're tucked in there. Some of them are stood on top of these little pedestal platforms, hollow inside as well. You see in the background another one, and how this kind of worked. You'll have slender slabs that frame it with a space void underneath. This one, damaged somehow, looks pretty intrusive to me, like someone smashed into it. Some are out in the bay, and they look like they have intrusive holes in them as well. Some are in town and have more squared off holes cut into their lids. That looks kind of original to me, like an original feature and not a looter breaking into it. The nubs on this one, probably broken off here. You could say, man, they're mostly uniform, but maybe there were some other variations here, and looking for the other side too. So not every time. Sometimes I will admit, yeah, they look pretty uniform and just decoration, but other times they do look obviously clustered and sporadic. Sometimes they're in the middle of the street, or the street has been built around them. Very square, straight, sticking straight out, perpendicular to the ground, squared off all sides. This one was finished, I assume, but they just chose not to embellish this one. My only guess. Kind of a poor quality photo here, but look just left to right. Tiny little nubs, huge nubs. These are almost too big for the box. They don't need to be that big. These kind of need to be a little bit bigger. You almost need to take some of the material there and put it over here. It's very curious, just variations, right? If it was all the same people doing this, they couldn't get it the same way every time? Come on. Come on, man. Another elevated one with a square cut in it. And some other elevated ones with what looks like more intrusive damage, right? I did have another angle of that one in town, but this doesn't look like that good of a photo to be able to tell anything concrete, but definitely one here, a square indentation, depression there maybe, potentially a broken off one here, and then another depression, corner incisement, something going on there. Remnant of one below maybe, a little offset and less shapely than the others. Maybe more down here though, see? Big, small, small. I think there was more variation to these originally. I don't think they were all just symmetric and uniform all the way across. I really don't think so. This one's pretty cool. The coloring, the staining on it. You can see the broken off remnant of a nub here. Here. The ones above, 1, 2, 3, 4 broken off nubs. Maybe a 5th in the shadow. So you can see what they look like when they break off. And even then, these up at top, yes, those look kind of symmetrical. But down here, there's a big gap. So is this a different pattern at the bottom than at the top? 3 at the bottom, maybe? And then 5 along the top? Was there even one down here at the end where it's broken? I'm not sure. And then these have the very nice, very embellished nubs at the top that turn into lion's heads. Very impressive stuff, but I wouldn't want to lift by those. You know, you damage them. Here, we're missing the box. We have the lid, we have the bedrock foundation that's prepared, and we have a goat. But we do not have a box. So what's going on here? Where did the box go? These are simple. It's got this more of a swelling, rounded, over-rounded shape to the lid. It curves back in on itself down here at the bottom, so it doesn't just curve and then go straight down. It swells out on both sides. Now this one I thought was pretty curious. One side does not look like the other, does it? So you have lions on the left and an unfinished carving on the right. What are we going to say there? Is that intentional? They leave it like that? They didn't even start them. What's that about? Are those the functional ones that you lift by, but then it's just going to topple over? How are you going to support it? Are you going to lift by those lines carvings? It's delicate. You're risking breaking them off if you do that. Sorry, this is a weird collage I found, but the lion's heads on the top on both sides here, and the same thing. Turn your head sideways. Yep, lion's heads. And then this, the same thing from the opposite side. Same box, I assume. They look almost identical, so I'm going to have to assume this is same location. You have an entrance down at the bottom and a square cut at the top. So was that to get in? Maybe we could say the one on the top right. Maybe that looks a little rough. Maybe you could say someone broke in. Bottom, that looks like a square corner. That looks like, yeah, it's damaged, but that looks like an intentional entrance. So definitely the bottom was accessible. The top, I'm not sure why that hole is there. And the traces again, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Maybe there was not a third one here. The corner is broken, but I'm not 100% that there was a nub there. It's up for speculation. In any case, the top row is not like the bottom row. Did we mention the square cut out in this one? I'm not sure if I did, but now I am. Is it someone climbing in there? I'm not sure how big this is, if that's human sized. Or was that an original aspect of this? Yeah, and zoomed out on that box we were looking at before with the uneven nubs. One side's decorated, one side's not. The hole at the bottom. That's obviously original, guys. That is made the hard way from 2 corners of 2 blocks. So that's intentional. That was deliberate. But why? Why have space in the bottom below whatever the box is and what it's for? These lines stick out really far in 2 circles motifs on either side here. And a different style of inscription panel. It's just square. It doesn't have the little flowery bits on either end. Okay, guys, I think we've looked at pretty much all of them. There are a few, out in the bay, like we saw before. And there's a lot that seem clustered by the coastline in some areas. I believe we zoom back up. Yes. So they're just littered by the shoreline in some cases. And in this location, you can see the different inscription panels on the boxes. Some of them are relief. So I have to say if they're relief, they're original. The circle motif on the ends. Now look at the variation just right here in the nubs. Square here, circular at the top. That's the first one I've seen with circular nubs. So even amongst this one site we have variation. Square again. And another raised inscription panel. And another one here. And maybe some corner beveling or incising going on. Another just nice block. Interesting, just laying there. One toppled over, broken. Man, I wish that was my house. Looks like someone broke into that one. That one looks intrusive. Doesn't it? Very cheeky way to install your light. Yeah, no one knows that that's all concrete. No, that's all original. Yeah, you're doing a good job. I almost forgot this one. These boxes that we saw in a previous episode that were stacked on top of pedestals and kind of haphazard. Zoom in real close. Nubs below here as well. 1, 2, maybe more, but hard to tell. Small filler stone at a corner, right? These hallmarks overlap, guys. And you can see L-shaped polygonal fitment on some blocks in the background. Yeah, this stuff is repeating. There's your lion's head drain spouts at Heraclea Sintica, Bulgaria. right? Obviously lion's heads, they're drain spouts, and the nubs on the foundation, they're looking right at them. Yep. And there is one more box I want to show you guys today. And thank you to Dave, Uchronia Utopia, for showing us this. It was about a year ago he sent this to us. This is in this Turkey region. Okay, what are we going to say about these nubs? They're inside the box. You're not lifting anything from the inside of the box. Now, Charles Koss, shout out to Charles Koss, and thank you, sir, for your shout out to me in your previous video. Appreciate that. He mentions and hypothesizes that these might have been pegs to support a floor, a false floor, or a slab of some kind to be laid on top of this. And I'm open to that. That's, that's practical, right? But I'd have to see more examples of this and a history of this practice in this area of these other boxes having these little, resting floors, these supported floors on these nubs. It needs to be a repeated practice for me to accept that. So this is one of the only interiors that I've been able to find of a box in the Lycian regions of Turkey. So if we can find some more interior shots and find more of these internal nubs, that'll either prove Charles Koss's proposal, or if we don't, like say if we have another angle of this and there aren't two pairs, another matching pair on the other side to support a floor, then we're going to have to throw that idea out. And then what are we left with? I think we're only left with byproduct of manufacture and language. So let me know what you guys think. I'll leave you with another outro of some more best of. Maybe we'll do that more if you guys like that. Otherwise, we'll cut that out and we'll just do it the normal way like we have been. Either way is okay with me. Let me know what you think of the music, because I wrote it. Thank you all for hanging out with me. We'll talk to you next time.